Late one rainy evening, a traveler driving along an empty highway notices a strange neon sign glowing through the darkness. The sign reads, E. Coli's Diner. But this is no ordinary restaurant. The entrance itself is shaped like a giant human colon, twisting around the doorway like an enormous pink tunnel. The moment anyone sees this bizarre colon-shaped diner, they should immediately think of one organism, Escherichia coli, commonly known as E. coli, one of the most important bacteria in medicine and a natural resident of the human colon. As the traveler steps closer, he notices the air filled with the smell of grilled meat, spoiled milk, and disinfectant. Something inside feels deeply wrong. The diner is crowded, chaotic, and almost everyone inside appears sick, frightened, or rushing somewhere in panic. As the traveler walks through the entrance, the first thing he notices is the chef standing in the center of the diner. The chef looks terrified, sweating heavily, almost as if he knows disaster is unfolding around him. He is wearing a bright pink apron stained with splashes of food and liquid. That pink apron is extremely important because it represents one of the classic laboratory characteristics of E. coli. E. coli is a gram-negative rod and a strong lactose fermenter. In the microbiology laboratory, when E. coli grows on Mac conchi agar, it ferments lactose and produces bright pink colonies. So this strange chef with the glowing pink apron becomes the perfect visual memory anchor for lactose fermentation and gram-negative staining characteristics. In one hand, the chef nervously holds a large pink bubbling milkshake overflowing with foam and sweetness. The bubbling pink milkshake reinforces the same concept again, lactose fermentation. Whenever someone remembers this pink milkshake inside E. coli's diner, they should instantly recall that E. coli ferments lactose and forms pink colonies on Mac conchi agar. But suddenly, the traveler notices something far more disturbing in the chef's other hand. The chef is holding a massive hamburger dripping blood onto the floor. The meat inside is completely raw, uncooked, and dangerous looking. Blood runs down the chef's gloves and splashes onto the tiles beneath him. This raw, bloody burger represents one of the most dangerous strains of E. coli enterohemorrhagic E. coli, also known as EHEC, especially the infamous UTI H7 strain. The raw undercooked beef immediately reminds us of the classic source of infection. EHEC is commonly associated with contaminated undercooked ground beef and causes severe hemorrhagic colitis. Nearby customers stare in horror as blood drips from the burger onto the floor, because this strain causes bloody diarrhea, one of the hallmark clinical presentations of EHEC infection. The traveler slowly looks upward and notices a glowing sign hanging behind the chef. Written in giant red letters are the words, UTI H7 special, no antibiotics. The warning flashes repeatedly as though the diner itself is trying to warn everyone inside. This is one of the most important high-yield exam points related to EHEC infection. Unlike many bacterial diarrheal illnesses where antibiotics may help, antibiotics are avoided in EHEC infections because they increase toxin release and raise the risk of a devastating complication called Hemolytic uremic syndrome, or HUS. The warning sign becomes unforgettable because it combines the strain name UTI H7 with the treatment caution, no antibiotics. Suddenly, a young child sitting at a nearby table begins to cry softly. Floating beside the child is a strange balloon shaped like a bruised purple kidney. The kidney balloon looks damaged, swollen, and darkened with patches of blue and red. This frightening balloon represents hemolytic uremic syndrome. In HUS, the Shiga-like toxin produced by EHEC damages blood vessels, especially inside the kidneys. Children are particularly vulnerable to this complication. The syndrome classically produces a triad of hemolytic anemia, thrombocytopenia, and acute kidney injury. The bruised kidney balloon floating beside the frightened child creates a powerful mental image linking EHEC infection with renal failure and HUS. Meanwhile, the chaos inside the diner continues to grow. On the opposite side of the restaurant, a businessman carrying a suitcase suddenly bursts through the crowd. His face is pale with desperation as he rushes toward a restroom door marked UTI. As he runs, watery fluid spills behind him across the diner floor. This businessman represents another important form of E. coli infection, enterotoxigenic E. coli, or ETEC. ETEC is one of the most common causes of travelers' diarrhea. Travelers visiting regions with contaminated food or water often develop profuse watery diarrhea caused by toxins that stimulate intestinal secretion. The businessman's suitcase symbolizes travel, while the watery spill behind him perfectly represents the watery diarrhea of ETEC infection. The traveler watches as the businessman desperately pushes open the restroom labeled UTI. This part of the diner reveals another extremely important role of E. coli in medicine. E. coli is the single most common cause of urinary tract infections. Normally, E. coli lives harmlessly in the colon as part of the natural intestinal flora. But when it enters the urinary tract, especially in women, it can ascend into the bladder and kidneys, producing infections such as cystitis and pyelonephritis. The restroom marked UTI becomes the visual anchor for E. coli urinary infections, reminding students that the same bacteria living peacefully inside the gut can become pathogenic once it enters the urinary system. As the traveler stands frozen in the middle of E. coli's diner, he begins to realize that every object inside this terrifying restaurant represents a different feature of Escherichia coli. The colon-shaped diner itself reminds us that E. coli normally inhabits the colon as gut flora. The chef's pink apron and bubbling milkshake represent lactose fermentation and pink colonies on mac conky agar. The raw bloody burger symbolizes EHEC and hemorrhagic colitis with bloody diarrhea. The glowing "no antibiotics" sign warns against treating UTI H7 infections with antibiotics because of the risk of hemolytic uremic syndrome. The bruised kidney balloon beside the child represents kidney injury and HUS. The businessman with the suitcase and watery spill represents travelers' diarrhea caused by ETEC. And the restroom labeled UTI reminds us that E. coli is the leading cause of urinary tract infections worldwide. Suddenly, the lights inside the diner begin flickering rapidly. The pink neon sign outside pulses brighter and brighter. The chef drops the bloody burger onto the floor with a loud splatter. The child clutches the bruised kidney balloon tighter. The businessman disappears into the restroom. Everywhere inside the diner, panic spreads as blood, water, milkshake foam, and warning signs blend together into one unforgettable scene. And in that moment, the traveler finally understands the secret of E. coli's diner. Every terrifying detail inside the restaurant is teaching the complete story of Escherichia coli. Whenever someone later remembers this bizarre colon diner filled with pink milkshakes, bloody burgers, kidney balloons, travelers rushing to the restroom, and glowing warning signs, the entire microbiology of E. coli will immediately return to memory. They will remember that E. coli is a gram-negative lactose-fermenting rod that normally lives in the colon, causes travelers' diarrhea, hemorrhagic colitis, hemolytic uremic syndrome, and urinary tract infections. And through this single chaotic story, one of the most important bacteria in medicine becomes impossible to forget.